Welcome to the video vinyl community. It's been about a month since I did a video, and it's been kind of low-level chaos here with illness and other things going on. But I've had some ideas during that period, and I've got a few ideas, and so I've got ideas that are lining up to do videos over the next week or two. So there'll be more of this stuff, I guess, coming. But I wanted to do one today. To pick on something that's been niggling me for a little while, is that if you've been following this channel, I've been going through, albeit rather slowly, year by year, from the first year that I've been buying records, and kind of trying to, selecting my top 20 albums of each year, but also talking about, really, I guess, mainly for myself, is kind of put it in context and bands that I saw during that period and what else was going on in my life and so on and so forth. And I've done pre-72, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76. And I got this 1976, and usually after I put a video out, several people do leave comments on the videos, which is absolutely great. And I love getting into discussions with people, post-launch, post-uploading of the video. I think it's great. But when I picked my top 20 albums of 1976 and the preceding years, people often leave comments which would suggest good choices, but why didn't you consider A, B, and C, other albums? And more often than not, I'm thinking, oh my, they must think that I don't think these albums are any good at all, but actually they're on my longer shortlist that I consider, and then go through the re-listening to these albums again before I decide to distill it down to 20. So I thought what I would do on this occasion is just to throw up a handful of albums that just missed the cut for me in 1976, but are all good albums. And many of them have been mentioned. Most of them have been mentioned by other people. But I just want to kind of tip my hat to them because they are good albums. So the first one is Nils Lofgren and Cry Tough. Nils, if you know Nils Lofgren, you'll know that he had a band called Grin, which I think he launched in the late 60s, 68, 69, released a handful of albums and then went solo. But in the intervening years, he worked with Neil Young on Tonight's the Night as a guitarist. I think maybe also a pianist, actually. I might be mistaken there, so correct me if I'm wrong. And of course, these days, or for the past 30 years or so, he's been, he's maybe getting on for 40, he's been a touring member of the E Street Band, and he's appeared on one or two albums as well in more recent years as that extra guitarist. So he was very credible in the industry. But in these solo years, this was his second solo album, if I haven't already mentioned it. This was my first introduction to Nils Lofgren. Cry Tough. What can I say about this album? Beautifully recorded. There's something about those 1970s recordings where, and I mean, I listened to this again this morning, and I listened to on headphones, and it was astonishingly good. Everything seems recorded so well. Drums, the bass, the guitar, and I mean, Nils being the guitarist that he is, you'd expect him to dominate, the guitar to dominate this album. But it doesn't really. It's the songs that dominate this album, and his guitar, appears where it's appropriate to appear. And it's full of just like soulful songs and arrangements. He's got I tell you what it reminds me of. It reminds me of a more electric and rock version of Ry Cooder. So he uses a little bit of those gospely vocals in the background. Uses acoustic guitar, slide guitar, but it really good. And so what's great about this album is that it sounds great. It's got some great tracks. The title track, I don't want to overuse the word amazing, but I just think it's such a standout track on this album. It's Not a Crime. There's the rear cover. Has it got an in? No, it hasn't got an inner sleeve. At least mine hasn't. It's got a version of, I think it's Graham Goldman's For Your Love, Yardbirds, I think, which is pretty good. It's certainly interesting. And then Mud in Your Eye is acoustic guitar based most of the time. it's all good, and it closes with a really great song called Jailbait, but on a subject matter that is well dodgy these days, and that would never get past the record company in the 21st century. But if you can ignore the lyrics and just think about the arrangement and the dynamics of the song, it's really good. So anyway, that's me tipping the hat to Nils Lofgren and Cry Tough. Second album that just missed the cut for me was Bob Seger's Night Moves. Not a huge fan of Bob Seger necessarily. I first got introduced to his music through the single Main Street, which is on this album. And when I think of Bob Seger, I always think of a friend of mine who says he's a superior version of Bruce Springsteen, but he's not really. Bruce Springsteen's kind of got more of folk sensibility, folk roots in his music, and some soul as well. But this is more Bob Seger's music, to me, seems more blues based. So a lot of the arrangements are predictable, which is no bad thing because it's pretty good. The rockers in particular are kind of going exactly where you expect them to go. His voice isn't absolutely fantastic. It's kind of a bit gruff. It's kind of Midwest and all that sort of stuff that you'd expect from a 70s rocker. But some of the slower songs that on this album, like the title track, is lovely. It's really good. Sunburst, which closes side one, which has it kind of starts quite slow and gentle, and speeds up a little bit in the second half of it. Main Street, of course. Ship of Fools. Yeah, it's good. Look at that band. I mean, that is a 70s rock band, isn't it? But yeah, really good. That's just another version of the cover photo and the lyrics in the inner sleeve. So yeah, really good. Bob Seger, do like him. Definitely a contender for being in the top 20 albums of 1976. One that's more obscure is a band called Metro and their album Metro, their debut album. Now, this is kind of a strange album to me. I mean, look at the way they dress and everything. When this album came out, it sounded quite different from just about anything else that was around. And I listened to it again just the other day, and I kind of feel that it still stands out. It's hard to put it in a particular genre and say, they were part of this movement. Well, they weren't part of any real movement. I mean, there's a guy here, Duncan Brown. That's this guy. The main singer is here, Peter Godwin. Duncan Brown. Duncan Brown was a folk singer in the late 60s. Released 2 or 3 albums. And it's kind of strange, but this album is on the Transatlantic label, which is a folk label from the UK. So that's that's side A and side B. So nice labels. But you might not know Metro, but you'll know one of the songs, because the first track on side 1, which is called Criminal World, was covered by David Bowie on Let's Dance. And there's something about the smoothness and the kind of languid style here. It's very, very inventive. I mean, you wouldn't say this band was ever as inventive as David Bowie, and that would be absurd. But for a standalone album, it is still very, very interesting and quite unique. If you really push me in a corner and said, well, give us a clue as to who might enjoy Metro, this album. Well, if you're into Bowie, you'd probably think, well, this album is quite good. It's got hints of Roxy music. The smoothness of albums like Avalon and Manifesto, but with still a little bit of the more inventive arrangements that were on the earlier albums like Stranded and For Your Pleasure. It's not as weird as the first Roxy Music album, never mind. But yeah, it's really, really good. It's again, sounds fantastic. It's got a great bass guitar on it. It's got Simon Phillips plays drums, and Simon Phillips is a very, very famous session musician. I think he played or plays with Toto these days, so very well regarded musicians on this album. Yeah, great album, worth seeking out. Another one, debut album by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. This comes second to their second album, you're going to get it. Because I think the second album's got a lot more energy about it. This is, you can tell it's a debut album, really. It's got some fantastic songs on it. Breakdowns on this album. The Wild One, Forever, Anything That's Rock and Roll. Stranger in the Night, Fooled Again, I Don't Like It. Luna, and of course American Girl, which was the hit single that broke Tom Petty. But yeah, excellent album, as I say. Doesn't quite match the second album, and certainly doesn't match the third album. But yeah, great artist. Sadly departed. And I've got 3 or 4 more. Man from Man's Earth Band. The Roaring Silence. Now this is a very patchy album, but it includes, in my judgment, the very best cover version of any Bruce Springsteen song. And it's the long version. Is it about 8 minutes? I'm not even sure. It tells me here. It doesn't tell me. It'll probably tell me on the label, but I'm not going to mess with that. It's about 8 minutes. 8 minutes of Blinded by the Light. Superb. He turns Blinded by the Light from some far too wordy semi-folk song from Greetings from Asbury's Park into like a prog rock stroke pop classic. It's really good. It's also got some beautiful moments on this. I mean, Manfred Mann is not noted for his songwriting, but his interpretation is kind of up there. There's a track called Singing the Dolphin Through by Mike Herron. Mike was part of the duo that led the Incredible String Band. And that's quite a rare track. It's hard to find track in Mike Herron's catalogue, but it is really good. And that, again, it takes a more kind of a folk song into something much grander and more musical, dare I say it. What else have we got on here? An instrumental called Waiter. There's a Yawn in My Ear groan, which is just busy noise, really. The Road to Babylon's good. Closes with a really nice song that was written by Manfred Mann and Chris Slade, the drummer, called Questions. So yeah, great album, worth having for Blinded by the Light alone. Don't settle for the 3-minute version. And this album just missed the cut. We all know about that one because we probably all got it. We haven't all got that, but that's Joan Armour Trading's second or third album, can't remember, the self-titled Joan Armour Trading. This has the immortal Love and Affection on it, her best song, her most famous song. Wonderful singing, great mood. It's got everything like up-tempo, but it's got some fantastic kind of late-night vibe on it as well. So yeah, Joan Armour Trading is a great album. I'm going to give you 2 more. One is, the second last one is Barkley, James Harvest and Octoberon. Barkley, James Harvest, kind of folky, prog, Beatles obsessed, early 70s. It's when they kind of came to prominence, early 70s band. They're one of these bands that's really quite strange. Strange is not the word. It's a bit like Supertramp in a sense, in that they've got 2 main songwriters, Les Holroyd, who also plays bass guitar and sings, and John Lees, who plays guitar and sings. And they don't so much collaborate as write different songs that the band eventually bring to fruition. And they're all very, very distinctive. Les Holroyd's songs are very, very wordy, soft vocals, lots of harmony. John Lees has more of a steely voice, not as warm, but has this lovely guitar, which he tends to play. I mean, I'm no musician, so forgive me, but he tends to play kind of high notes, but very melodic, and no shredding. This album, it also has a track by the keyboard player Willie Wilson home called Raw, which closes. He seems to get a track on each of the albums when he's there. Rock and Roll Star, written by Les Holroyd. Yeah, it's patchy, but it's most notable for a track called Suicide, which is about 6-7 minutes. It's an album closer. It's got a gorgeous melody line on the guitar, and it just keeps coming back and back. And it's the lyrics are, you know, from someone who is, you know, in despair, and the moment when the person is wandering along the street, bumping into people, and the sound effects of the street and people passing comment, you know, not prominent so much, but it's got a gorgeous guitar solo, or not solo, but it kind of going right the way through the song. It's let down at the end because you get like the squelch of a body landing on the pavement or the sidewalk. I think what they did, they strapped a microphone or two to a dummy and threw it off a building to try and you know, kind of depict the, you know, the suicide, and it kind of lets it down really. It's just it's just far too cheesy. But anyway, that was a really important album to me in 1976, and probably wouldn't make many other people's top 20. And then finally, quite a few people mentioned this one, and that is, you know what that is, don't you? Rush 2112. Kind of their breakthrough album, I think. Certainly when it come to Europe, because they'd already released 3 albums, I think. Fly By Night, Caress of Steel, and of course the debut Rush. But this is the one that had that big side-long prog epic, 2112. It's very, very exciting. Unfortunately, and it's, you know, it's me, I think Geddy Lee's voice at this particular stage in their career was just a little bit too much overwrought, a little bit too high pitched for my taste. But the music, super dynamic, sounds absolutely great. It doesn't make my top 20 because I think when it comes to the next few years, I think they easily surpassed this album, albeit it's recognised as a classic within their catalogue. Anyway, there's a few albums, as I suggested at the beginning, I was going to tip my hat to. Let me know what you think. I'm sure there's still albums I've missed, but you know, that's kind of getting me, you know, almost to 30 favourite albums of 1976. So I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching this one. Ta-ra for now.